Nico Dwyer here for the 10th inning, and before I get this video started, I just want to say I apologize for not posting more often. I apologize for stopping This Day in Sports History. So I'm Nico Dwyer here for the 10th inning, giving you This Day in Sports History for December 1st. If y'all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. This Day in Sports History. We will start in 1923 at the Grey Cup in Canada. This is for the CFL, the Canadian Football League. And in Toronto, Queen's University would retain their title with a 54-0 shutout victory over the Regina Rugby Club. This would be the largest Grey Cup victory margin ever. From one Canadian game, we move to another Canadian game 1 year later in 1924 in the NHL. However, this would actually be the first NHL game to be played in the United States, as the Boston Bruins would defeat the Montreal Maroons 2-1. We go back to the Grey Cup in 1928, and the Hamilton Tigers would win their third of 5 Grey Cups with a 30-0 shutout victory over the Regina Rough Riders. We move back to hockey once again, this time in 1934. The Toronto Maple Leafs would defeat the St. Louis Eagles 4-3 to set an NHL record for the most wins to start a season with 8. And this would only add on to the record because they already had the record at 7. They just added on with 8. This record would actually last until 59 years later, when who else but the Toronto Maple Leafs would do it again in the 1993-94 season with 10 in a row to start the year. We now move to the USA version of football. In college football, 1936, we have the Heisman winner, and Larry Kelly, a tight end out of Yale, would win the Heisman on the year. 17 catches, 372 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Kelly ended up taking home the trophy with 213 total points to second place's 47 total points. And 1 year later, we stay with the Heisman voting in 1937. We have another Yale winner, this time Clint Frank, halfback out of Yale, would win with 489 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He would have 524 total points to second place's 284. We go back to the Grey Cup in 1945, and the Toronto Argonauts would win their 6th title with a 35-0 shutout victory over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. From the CFL back to college football, in 1947 we have yet another Heisman winner, this time a Notre Dame winner, Johnny Lujack, quarterback of Notre Dame. 777 passing yards on the year, 139 rushing yards. He would get 742 total points to second place's 555. And just like we had 2 Yales earlier, we have another back-to-back Notre Dame in 1953 in the Heisman. John Latner, Notre Dame's running back, 651 rushing yards, 204 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. And this would get him a total of 1,850 points in the voting, only 56 points ahead of second place, who had 1,794 points. This would be the 4th closest voting in Heisman history. But now we get off of Heisman's, off of Grey Cups for a while, move up 1 year to 1954 in Major League Baseball. The New York Yankees and the Baltimore Orioles would complete the largest trade in MLB history, as 17 players, which included Don Larson, Gene Woodland, and Bob Turley, would go to opposite teams. The first phase of this trade began on November 18th, and it would conclude with this final transaction of 4 players each way on the first day of December. Stay in Major League Baseball in 1956, and Frank Robinson of the National League, Luis Aparicio of the American League would be voted Rookies of the Year. Then in college football, we don't have a Heisman winner, but we have the Iron Bowl, which is the annual Auburn versus Alabama meeting. Auburn would defeat Alabama 34-7 in Alabama to get their 11th of 37 victories. Then we have the 1956 Summer Olympics. Summer Olympics in December. These were held in Melbourne, Australia, so yes, Summer Olympics. We start in the marathon, and Elaine Mamoun of France would win the marathon in 2 hours, 25 minutes. We stay in those games, go to the track side now. In the men's 4x100 meter relay, the USA team would set a world record 39.6 seconds to win the gold. Then in the women's 4x100 meter relay, the Australian team would win at 44.65 seconds. Over to the field side of those games, and in the women's high jump, American Mildred McDaniel, with a world record of 1.76 meters, would win the high jump, and she would hold this record for just under 1 year. Stay in those games, go to swimming though, and Australian swimmer Dawn Fraser would set the world record in the women's 100-meter freestyle, 1 minute, 2 seconds, and this would be the first of 3 consecutive gold medals of those games for Fraser. But not only that, it would be an Australian sweep, 1, 2, 3 in the women's 100-meter, as Lorraine Kropp would win silver and Faith Leach bronze. And Fraser would end up beating her own record multiple times, the final being in 1964. Finally, in the 1956 games in basketball, led by future Hall of Famers Bill Russell and Casey Jones, the USA would win its 4th consecutive Olympic gold medal with an 89-55 victory over the Soviet Union in the final to cap a perfect 8-0 record in the games. We go back to college football now, start out in the Heisman in 1959. This would be the 25th edition of the award, and Billy Cannon, LSU running back, would win with 598 rushing yards, 161 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns on the season, and he would get 1,929 points, with second place getting 613. Then we go to the Iron Bowl in 1962, and Alabama would defeat Auburn 38-0 to get a shutout at home, and this would be their 4th straight shutout in the series to claim their 13th of 47 victories. 1 year later in 1963, we have history in NASCAR as Wendell Scott would win the Jacksonville 200, becoming the first black driver ever to win a race at NASCAR's premier level. From NASCAR, we go over to golf in 1973, and Jack Nicklaus would finish 13 under par to win the Walt Disney World Classic, 1 stroke ahead of Mason Rudolph, and he would become the first player ever to reach $2 million in PGA career earnings. Stay in 1973, but move back to the Iron Bowl. Alabama would defeat Auburn again in shutout fashion at home, 35-0. This would be their 20th of 47 victories. Now we go to 1974, and we have 2 separate events for you. We start out with a world record in the women's marathon. American Jacqueline Hansen would run it in 2 hours, 43 minutes, 54.5 seconds, and this record would be held for about 3 months. Then in tennis, at the Davis Cup, South Africa would be awarded the Davis Cup title after India would refuse to travel to South Africa for the final in protest of the South African government's apartheid policies. So since South Africa won, they would be the 5th nation to win the Davis Cup, being the USA, Great Britain, France, Australia, now South Africa. We go back to the Iron Bowl in 1979, and Alabama would defeat Auburn 25-18 at home to win their 26th of 47 victories. 1 year later, we're back to the Heisman winner in 1980, and George Rogers, running back out of South Carolina, would win with 1,781 yards on the season, 14 touchdowns. He would get 1,128 total points to second place's 861. Now we move over to basketball. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would pass Oscar Robertson to become the NBA's second all-time leader in score behind Wilt Chamberlain in a 14-point outing in a 117-86 Lakers victory over the Utah Jazz. Move up 3 years later to 1984, and we have another Iron Bowl and Heisman to talk about. Let's start with the Iron Bowl. Alabama would defeat Auburn 17-15 to win their 29th of 47 victories. Then at the 50th edition of the Heisman Award, Doug Flutie, quarterback out of Boston College, would win with 3,454 yards on the season, 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Flutie would get 2,240 total points to second place's 1,251 points for the votes. And that leads us to the final Heisman voting of the day in 1990. Another quarterback, this time out of Brigham Young University, Ty Detmer. He would win with a season 5,188 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, 28 interceptions though. But it didn't matter at the end. Detmer would win 1,482 points to second place's 1,177. And just like we had our final Heisman, we have our final Iron Bowl also in 1990. Alabama would defeat Auburn 16-7 to win their 31st of 47 Iron Bowls. So now let's go to the Davis Cup in 1991. and Guy Forget would upset Pete Sampras 7-6, 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 to clinch a 3-1 final victory over the USA and give France their 7th of 10 titles. Speaking of France, in the Davis Cup 1996, Arnaud Boch would defeat Nicolas Coulthard in the closest deciding match in Cup history 7-6, 2-6, 4-6, 7-6, 10-8 to give France a 3-2 final victory, give them their 8th of 10 Davis Cup victories. We stay in 1996 but move over to the NHL. Wayne Gretzky would become the first and only player in NHL history to reach the 3,000 point plateau. This is included in playoffs, as he recorded an assist in a Rangers 6-2 victory over the Montreal Canadiens. Then we move up to 1997, starting the NHL. In their 81st season, the Montreal Canadiens would become the first team in history to play 5,000 games, as they would lose to the Penguins 1-0, bringing their franchise record to 2,625 victories, 1,603 losses, 772 draws, for a .620 winning percentage. 5 years later, we go into a final Davis Cup of the day in 2002, and Mikhail Yuzhny would defeat Paul-Henri Mathieu 3-6, 2-6, 6-3, 7-5, 6-4 to give Russia a 3-2 victory over France, and this would be Russia's first of 2 Davis Cups. Now we move to 2009 in football, or what we Americans call soccer, and the Ballon d'Or would be awarded to FC Barcelona forward Lionel Messi, who would win by a then record margin 240 points ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo. This would be Messi's first of 6 Ballon d'Ors. 3 years later in 2018, Tyson Fury would go up against Deontay Wilder, but even though Tyson Fury did dominate much of this match, Deontay Wilder got 2 knockdowns of Fury, which forced a split decision draw between the 2 competitors of Fury and Wilder. And finally in 2019, in F1, Lewis Hamilton would win the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to claim his 6th F1 World Drivers' Championship by 87 points. So that's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, I do apologize. If I mispronounced any names or awards, I also apologize. But I'll see everybody tomorrow for Nicholas Wire and the 10th inning.